Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make Millionaire Shortbread bars, or maybe you know them as caramel shortbreads or caramel slices. And this is a 3-layer bar, and this is what it looks like. You have a layer of shortbread topped with a layer of caramel and then a dark chocolate on the top. So we're going to start with the shortbread layer. So preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and you will need a 9-inch, 23-centimeter square baking pan. And I've lined this with with aluminum foil because that way it's a lot easier once we've baked the Millionaire Shortbread bars to get them out and cut them. So what I like to do is then lightly butter the pan, or you could spray it with one of those non-stick vegetable sprays. And if you notice, I've kind of melted just a little bit of butter, and I'm using a pastry brush because I find that a lot easier than trying to take a chunk of cold butter and spreading it. So there. So now, if you have an electric stand mixer like I do, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer, or you can even just in a bowl with a wooden spoon to make this batter. So you will need 3/4 of a cup, which is 170 grams of butter. Have that at room temperature. And you can use salted or unsalted, whatever you prefer. I prefer unsalted because I like the flavor, but really it's a personal preference. So what I'm going to do is just beat this on like medium speed just until it's nice and creamy and smooth. Okay, and now I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. Just sweeten that up just a little. And as always, scrape down the sides and bottom of your bowl as you need to. I'm going to make sure everything's all mixed together. So we're just going to beat this until it's nice and light and fluffy, 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. So this is what you're looking for. Just get a little bit of air in there and just everything all mixed together. So next, we're going to add a little bit of flavoring, 1/2 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. And I'm just going to beat that in. Okay. So all we have left are our dry ingredients. So I'm going to add 1½ cups, which is 195 grams of just all-purpose flour, or you may know that as plain flour. And then just 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now if you used salted butter, you could just leave out that salt. And then I'm just going to mix this in, start at low speed because you don't want the flour to come up, and then put up to medium speed. And you don't want it to get like a solid mass. You want it to just start to clump together. Okay, that looks good. So this is what we're looking for. As you can see, it's not solid lump, it's just starting to clump together. So that's good enough. Okay. So now we'll just pour this into our pan. And then either with your hands, or you could use a spoon or an offset spatula, what we're going to do is just spread this into an even layer. Okay, that looks good. Just kind of run your hand over to make sure it's an even layer, and then I'm just going to take a fork and just prick all over, and that helps prevent it from puffing up. Just lightly. Don't go all the way through the shortbread when you're doing this. Okay, so now we're going to put it in our oven for about 20 minutes, just until it gets like a pale golden color. Okay, our shortbread is now done. As you can see, it's just starting to turn brown around the edges. So now just put on a wire rack like I've done here, and we're going to let that cool. And while it's cooling, what we're going to do is start our caramel layer. Now, this is really simple. You make the caramel out of one 14-ounce can, which is 397 grams, of sweetened condensed milk. Now, sweetened condensed milk is actually just milk and sugar that has been cooked until about 60% of the water has been removed. So what we're going to do is just cook it a little more until it looks like caramel. So now I know some recipes call for you to just take the unopened can and put it in a saucepan of water and just cook it that way, but I'm really not comfortable doing that. So what I do is take a heat-proof bowl and just pour your milk in there. Okay. And then, turn that down a little, and then I'm just going to take a piece of aluminum foil and just cover it. And then I'm going to put it over a saucepan of simmering water, just like that. So you need to let this cook for somewhere between an hour and a half, just until it becomes thick and caramel colored. And what I like to do is every once in a while check it, give it a good stir, and then also check your water level and make sure it's still simmering. And when we come back, I'll show you what the end result is. Okay, so that looks great. As you can see, nice caramel color, nice and thick. So that's what you're looking for. It's really about color. So now just take it off the heat. And then what I like to do, scrape this off here, is just, I mean, you can do it with a wooden spoon, or I'm using a wire whisk. Just give it a real good stir. You can really smell that caramel in the kitchen here. So good. So now we're going to take our shortbread base that has cooled off, and then just pour the caramel right on top. Like so. And then with the back of the spoon, or I'm just going to use my offset spatula, just spread it out. Try to get an even layer. So now what we're going to do, we want to let this set, firm up a little, because we're going to be putting some melted chocolate over the top. So what I do is just put it into the refrigerator somewhere around a half an hour, just until it becomes firm. And when we come back, we will do our chocolate layer. So now for our chocolate glaze. You will need 6 ounces, 170 grams of a good quality semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate. You want to use a chocolate that you would just enjoy eating just as it is. And then just put that in a heat-proof bowl, along with a half a tablespoon, about 7 grams of butter. And then we're just going to put that over a saucepan of simmering water. And just until it's all melted and smooth. Okay, chocolate's now melted. The reason I added a little butter to that, the chocolate, is to keep it nice and shiny. So now, what I'm going to do is just let that cool just for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, because we don't want to put hot chocolate on the caramel. So just going to let that cool, and when we come back, we'll spread it on our layer of caramel. Okay, so now our caramel layer, if you touch it, it's quite firm. And our chocolate has cooled to room temperature. Make sure my water there. And then we're just going to pour this over. Okay. And then with the back of a spoon or an offset spatula, just gently spread the chocolate over the caramel. Looks good. So now what we want to do, before we cut these into squares, what we need to is we want that chocolate. We can't cut it right now because the chocolate is still so soft. So I'm just going to pop this back in the fridge, maybe 5-10 minutes. You don't want it too long. You don't want it to get where that chocolate really hardens so it's so firm. Then when we try to cut through it, the chocolate will just crack. So what we want to do is just let it firm up a bit. I would say it's probably 5-10 minutes, depending on how cold your fridge is. Okay, so now you can see our chocolate is firmed up. So then take a sharp knife and have some paper towel or a cloth, clean cloth, and just cut through. Like so. And then what I like to do is after each row I cut is just wipe off my knife and then just cut it into how many rows and the size squares you want. Okay, that looks good. I cut them into fairly small squares because these are quite rich. So now what I like to do is cover the pan and put this back in the fridge. You really want that to firm up before you actually try to take them out of the pan. And preferably, I like to leave them overnight because I find that that gives time for all the flavors to kind of soften and mingle, and the shortbread kind of tastes better the next day. So when we come back, we will try one. So we're now ready to cut our Millionaire Shortbread bars. Now, I did let these sit overnight in the refrigerator. And then because we've got the foil, you can just kind of lift it right out of the pan. Makes it a lot easier. And then just peel it back. And then take your knife and then just recut where we scored before. We chilled them overnight. And then you might want to have a cloth and wipe between because that caramel is quite sticky. So there we go. So there we have it. As you can see, we have the shortbread, we have the caramel, and then we have that nice dark chocolate. I'm going to try a little bit. Now, normally I let these, well, they're good cold. I must admit, I like them cold, but they're also really good if you let them, bring them to room temperature. So either way. That's really, really delicious. That shortbread, caramel, and then the dark chocolate. I really like letting them sit overnight because I think the chocolate kind of softens a little because I use pretty close to a bittersweet, so it's really sharp if you eat them right away, where if you let it sit overnight, it really softens. This is, I mean, it's just a really nice square or bar. So you can leave these, I mean, you can leave them at room temperature to store them, but they won't last too long. I find at least a week in the refrigerator, or you could freeze them. So enjoy, and until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.